Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you all how to model the shield, and I'm going to show you a bunch of different little tricks along the way. But most of what I'm showing you is stuff we've already gone over. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to show you I'm going to show you how to use symmetry, but before we even get into that, import your image plane. Locate the file that is included in the Canvas shell for this assignment, and then go ahead and just click Open to import the image plane. I go ahead after that, I drag it to the back, and then by default it'll say looking through camera. I just drag it back here using my move tool, and then I go ahead and so I'll just drag it back and then do looking through camera front. So now that I've got that in there, I'm going to start by creating a cube. And I'm going to go ahead and drag this up, so vertically and then horizontally. And then I'm going to go into my Polycube under the attribute editor over here, which can also be located right here with this button. And then I'm going to change my subdivisions on my width to 4, my subdivisions on my height to 6, and my subdivisions on my depth to 2. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to start with my Vertex tool, hold right click and go to Vertex, and I'm going to just start to drag these into place. Now you'll notice that I can only do one side at a time, which, you know, for one, they won't be perfectly symmetrical, which isn't the biggest thing in the world, but I want to show you how to do it anyway. So I'm going to undo that really quickly, and I'm going to show you how to turn on symmetry. Right up here where it says Symmetry Off, we're going to do Object X. Alright, so now when I click here, you'll notice I get both objects selected. Alright, so now that I've got that there, there's another way we can do this. I'm going to duplicate this object really quickly, and I want to show you something else. I'm going to go to my channel box, layer, create layer from selected, and just turn that off. So for this one, I want to show you how to duplicate special. So if I go into my face mode, I'm turning symmetry off. Control Shift right click is the keyboard shortcut, if you will, for turning symmetry on and off. I'm going to delete half of this object, and I want to show you the same exact thing, how we could work also, whether we use symmetry or this little trick called duplicate special. Now the symmetry is a lot quicker, a lot faster to access, but I want you to know how to do this regardless, because you never know, in the future reference you may find it extremely useful. And actually, before that symmetry tool was even included in Maya, this was the only way you could do it, so that's another reason why I want to show it to you. So I'm going to go into my vertex here, or with the object, I deleted half of it. And by default, because the axes was directly centered and all of that, I just want to show you in cases where this might come in handy. Let's go ahead. This is just a little trick I want to show you before I do this. This will show you how to sort of fix something. So I need to get all of these back to my center point, because, you know, for whatever reason something crazy happened while I was modeling and I had to delete half of it, and this is sort of what I'm left with. So I'm just going to run a click and drag over all of these and tap R on the keyboard, and then I'm going to use my scale tool and just scale them all accordingly, so that if I use my horizontal one, they'll scale directly to the center. Now I'm going to use my move tool and hold X to snap this to X equals 0 on the grid. And then you can obviously go in here and adjust this back to how it was. Now, the one thing I do want to show you is if this subdivision, or excuse me, this pivot point is also off center, you can go ahead and hold D and X and just drag that right on here, and that'll snap to the grid also. So holding D and X will snap it to the grid. So we want it right here on that line. Same with all of these other vertices. Holding X in this case, because I'm only moving the verts, you'll see it snaps just to the grid points, and I want it to be right here in the center, and as well as my pivot point. Now, with that being said, I can go to Edit and Duplicate Special which is Control-Shift-D, and I'm going to hit the little settings box. Now we need to make sure that the geometry type is under instance and the group under is on parent, and then scale is under -1. And then go ahead and click duplicate special. So instance, parent, and -1, and then duplicate special. And now you'll notice that whatever I do on one side, just as I was doing before with the symmetry, is happening on the other side. And this is, in previous versions of Maya, this is the only way you could do it, but you could do a symmetry. This was just the way it was. Now they actually just include it right in there, so you can do it either way. But I want to show you both ways anyway. Alright, so we can model it that way, but I'm going to stick with the other way with just using symmetry. So that's both ways you can use symmetry. So I'm going to turn on my symmetry tool again, holding Control Shift, right click, and symmetry. So Object X also, or in your modeling toolkit, Object X, and you can toggle it on and off here. So I'm going to go to my vertex and just start to drag these in, and this is sort of the best way to go about using symmetry now. But before they actually included this tool, that the way I just previously showed you with the duplicate special was really the only way you had, the only option you had when you wanted to run a symmetry. So I'm going to continue to run this model. Oop. And that'll work. And I'll grab this one and bring it up. So now that I've got that already, I'm only going to worry about the one side of the model. I don't need to worry about the other side, just the one side. So if it doesn't line up on both sides, don't worry about it. So from here, what I'm going to do is, to make this as easy as possible, is I'm going to select these faces. And actually, even before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and line up these vertices to the interior line work that I can follow to create this shield. And when this is done, it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to bring this one up. But it does need to be good enough, right? It doesn't need to be perfect, but it has to be good enough. So now that I've done this, right, I want to go ahead and grab those faces again. And I'm going to turn symmetry off for this because I find it to be easier to do. It scales a little bit better, because when I have symmetry on, you'll notice it goes right to the right even if I tap R, and then it's only going to scale on this side sort of uniformly inward. But if I turn symmetry off and I re-tap R, of course now it's not, tap W and then R, I guess you have to toggle it to a new tool, it'll snap back to the middle, and I'll get a better uniform scale because it's scaling directly from the center instead of, you know, offset left or offset right. And now from here, I'm going to extrude inward just enough, and I think that's pretty good. And now you'll notice, as I showed you in one of the Before You Begin modules, that I've got this sort of bleed through on the text with on the face with it's basically these normals. That's the side that Maya displays properly for us to see and view, are backwards, is what it, in essence, what it means. So in order to fix that in this case, because when we scaled in, we sort of overlapped that interior edge that we had, I'm going to select all those faces with my symmetry off, and then just scale those in, and you'll see what happens. And we get this nice little clean look to it. And just go ahead and scale it however you like to make it look right. So now that I've got all of that in here, I've got my nice clean edges around, and then I got these edges here also. And if I go in here, you should see, if you'd like to line it up a little bit better, which is always nice to do, especially when if you were to be working for a client, you'd want to make sure it's as closely as possible to their reference that they would possibly supply to you. And what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and do that also. And I'm going to do this one by vertice. Okay. And I feel like that's pretty good. Maybe this comes down just a bit. But I feel like that's a pretty good start. So I'm going to go into face mode. And in here, I'm just going to select my faces. And this you could have symmetry on or off, because we're just going to run a quick extrude. I'm going to press W, and then I'm going to go ahead and drag that out. Alright. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to create bevels in this object. Now, before I run what is called a smooth, so this is a smooth preview, but if I run a smooth here, holding shift, right click, and going to smooth, or in our modeling toolkit, just the smooth button here, you can subdivide these and get basically shading. I'm going to turn wireframe on shaded off, and you can get sort of the shape that you're looking for. But I'm going to undo that real quickly, and I want to show you, because we're going to do this first. We're going to bevel the edges. So I'm going to hold shift, or I'm going to hold right click and go to edge mode. And we've already beveled edges, but we haven't run a smooth yet. So I'm going to start doing it this way. I'm going to begin by beveling this edge, every edge on the outside of this object, right? This entire edge, and this entire edge. So I should have basically 3 entire, give or take, edge loops, if you will, selected around this. The last one I'm going to do is I'm going to double click this one, because I'm going to want that one done. And oh, I need this one selected also. 1, 2, 3, 4 edge loops, and then I'm going to select the edges also. And I'm going to do both of these simultaneously. I'm going to double click this one and get this one going. This one I only need the 3, where this one I need the 4. And now I've got these edges here. I also want to include it on this edge as well, so I get these nice clean crisp corners when I bevel it. So I'm going to do the same thing right down the middle, so I get a nice clean crisp edge on this point also. So out of the edges I have selected, if I tap 4 on my keyboard, you'll see in the ones highlighted in orange, basically all the edge loops wrapping around this edge. 1 running around, 2, oh, and I need this one. Be sure to get all of the edges the first time, and just to be sure, you can always undo it and then reselect your edges. So I've got all the edges I think I want selected this time. I'm actually going to bevel the outside of this as well. Okay, so I've got the entire outside, the line down the center, then just the outside here, the outside here, and then wrapping around. So just those edges, and try to do your best to select these beforehand. It makes it a lot easier later on. And then I'm going to hold shift and right click and go to Bevel Edge. And there's also, you can do Edit Mesh Bevel or Control B. And then I'm also going to change this from 1 segment to 2 segments, and from 0.5 to let's say 0.3, and tighten that up just a little bit. Now in here, I want to show you a couple things. I think I'll only have this issue with one edge, but if I tap 3 now, you'll see I get these really nice, clean, crisp edges. So, and I do have 2 corners that I need to fix with geometry. So before I do that, I'd like to show you the difference. So I just duplicated that pressing Control D. And now on this one, I'm going to run that bevel edge again at 0.3 and 2 segments. And now what you'll see, the difference in smooth mode when I tap 3, because we're going to get into that in a second. I'm going to turn my grid off. You'll see that this one has these really nice sharp edges, whereas this one is sort of rounded out. And we want the sharp edged one. And this is called hard surface modeling. That's what this is called. Hard surface modeling. Now, one of the things that happened when I did this is you'll see that this all turned out really nice and clean. But right here I have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided polygon. And I have that on both sides. This is the only point where that I know of anyway at the moment that has this issue. That's it. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my multi-cut tool. And I'm going to stay in one mode because it's just easier. If you tap 3, it can be kind of tricky to select. So one mode is usually easier. And just zoom in on that one point. And to clean this part up, I just click and drag on the line using my multi-cut tool until it basically locks on that vert. And then I release. And now I'm going to go right up to this corner. And I'm going to do that in symmetry mode, so I only have to do it once. I'm going to go directly into this corner here, right in the middle, and now I'm going to go right up here to this point, and I'm going to click and drag and bring that in. And now you'll see that if I tap 3, now it's all quads again. So this is clean topology, as I was mentioning. Now it does have this sort of strange edge loop if I go ahead and click around here, but that's okay. If I click here, it selects that entire edge loop and it kind of goes through, but it's all quad, so it's really nice clean topology. And it's much crisper than this one where it's all soft and round, where this one has the hard surface modeling, where this one has sort of more of an organic feel to it. But we want this one. Now that I've got that in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap 1 again on my keyboard, and now that I've got the proper geometry that I need for my smoothing, for my preview smooth, now I'm going to actually physically add in that geometry. So I'm going to do an edit, delete all by type and history before I do that. And I'm going to hold shift and hold right click and go to smooth. It's the second one down on the drop down list. Hold shift and right click and go to smooth. And you'll see a little PolySmooth face pop-up comes up in divisions, and you can change this, but keep it at 1. Don't change it. Because what you've basically done just now is you've multiplied whatever geometry you had on this object, and you basically multiplied it by 4. So now it's 4 times the size in geometry, in polygons, than it previously was. But what this does is it allows me to make a change here that I would like to do, and I'm going to bring this down to match my reference a little bit more closely. I'll do the same thing here. And if I tap 3 on my keyboard, I get a much cleaner look. It appears that I wanted to have a crisper edge here, but I'm not going to bother with it now since I've come to this point. But you could always go back and change it. Now, if I go into, actually I will show you how to do this. If I go into here and I have my PolySmooth face, I can always go back and change my divisions to 0. And now I'm right back where I started. And if I wanted to have that edge right here with a clean bevel, I could do that, but it's going to be a little bit more than it's worth, so I'm not going to bother with it. But you could essentially go back, and if I start showing you how to do it with proper topology, it's going to be more confusing than beneficial to you. So, but you can go back into your channel box and I'm going to turn the divisions back to 1 and make some changes from beforehand. So that's how the build history can be beneficial for you. I know I've explained how it can be detrimental to your modeling process, but there's a case where it can be totally beneficial. Um, now that I've got this far, and I've added the geometry in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a, I'm still not done with the actual physical model. I'm going to create a polycylinder, and I'm going to go to, or polysphere, excuse me. I'm going to go to polysphere 2 in here, and I'm going to change this to 8 and 8. Yours may say polysphere 1, and I'm going to change this to, so I'm going to drag it off to the side for the moment, and I'm going to go into my face mode. It doesn't really matter if symmetry's on or off for this, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete. Now with my object selected, oops, my symmetry, my pivot point is still directly in the center of this, which is exactly what I want, and I want to rotate this at 90 degrees. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this down, and I'm going to start to match this to my topology as best as I can, and making sure it's on the proper side of my mesh. Okay. So basically I'm going to try to make sure that it's okay. So I say that's a pretty good size, maybe a little bit smaller. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap this holding V directly to those vertices. So I'm going to turn on shading and wireframe on shaded. And I'm going to Control D and duplicate this. And I'm going to put the next one about here. I could match this a little bit more closely, but I feel like it might get a little confusing. Actually, let's see. I could match it pretty close to the reference, and I'll go about there. And this one will go about here. And the next one is going to go here. And I'm pressing Control D to duplicate, by the way, and you can also access this Edit Duplicate. So Control D to duplicate. And I'm going to go over here. That's pretty close. And one last one. I'm holding V to snap to vertex. And now for this last part, I'm going to tap 3 on my keyboard to bring this into smooth preview, and I'm actually going to delete these 2 ones that are exactly in the center. So I'm going to highlight those 2 edges, and the reason being is it's just a little redundant to have that much extra geometry. It is nice, but it's going to be difficult for me to add this in. So I'm going to press, while both of these edges are selected, Control and delete. I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And now in my vertex mode, I'm just going to drag those out just a bit. Alright, and that's how that'll work. So, now that I've got my Control D, bring that over there. Now that I've got my bolts in place, I actually feel like this one, even though I'm matching the reference exactly, I could do that as closely as I am anyway. I think I'm going to just pop it up right here because I think it looks a little bit better. It's just a personal opinion. Now, if this was a client you were working for, you'd want to match the reference as closely as possible, and you'd even change the exact location of this, which wouldn't be too difficult, but I'm fine with where it is right now. And what we can do now is, just like we did with the handle, I'm going to extrude these faces in, and I'm going to delete. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to extrude these faces in and delete. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to extrude these faces in and delete. Same thing here. Extrude these faces in and delete. Same thing here. I know this is redundant, but this is just practice, and delete. And same thing here. Extrude in and delete. Alright, so I've got it set up on both sides now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these, right? I'm going to press the combine button. So I'm going to combine these objects. Now, like we did with showing you the duplicate special, I need to change this pivot point to be at the center. I don't need this to be a duplicate special. I just need this pivot point to be at the center. So I'm going to hold D and X and snap this directly to the center. And now I'm going to press Control D once more. And then I'm going to scale these at -1. So now they're at exactly both sides of this model. From here, while I still have symmetry on, I'm going to start to snap these all into place, holding V, and wrap this all the way around. And these are both going to be identically symmetrical. And we're just creating the edge loops that we need in order to make this a watertight object. And I'm just snapping these, holding V to every single one. And I just undid that because it didn't snap where I wanted it to. And we're almost done here. And now that I've got that all taken care of, I'm going to take this object, this object, this object, and this object, and I'm going to combine them all. And now I'm going to go to my Vertex tool again. I'm going to highlight. I can highlight this entire thing. As long as when I hold Shift and hold right click and go to Merge Vertices and I hit this little threshold button, as long as I add a couple zeros in front of here, I should be totally fine. And I'm going to click Merge. And let's just see. The quickest way to check this is if you just click on one and drag off, it should be merged. Okay? So if I tap 3, I should have this sort of soft, and it looks like on this side it didn't merge properly. So I'm going to turn off symmetry and just snap these into place real quick. And merge vertices. I've already set the threshold in here, but I'll just show you again. Hit apply. Now I'll tap 3 and see if it worked, and it did. And I'm going to check all of these. Now the last thing I want to do is, now that I've got that done, is I'm going to go ahead and double click the edge loop on every single one of these holding shift. And I can turn on symmetry. Should be fine. And everything should be selected. And then I can turn off symmetry, it doesn't matter, turn it on, turn it off. What I'm going to do here is Bevel Edge, Control B, or just Shift right click Bevel, or Edit Mesh Bevel. And I'm going to change this to 0.3 and change the segments to 2. And now when I tap 3 on my keyboard, and I'm going to turn shading and wireframe on shaded off, you'll see it's all one object, and I've got this nice crisp clean geometry because I beveled these edges, right? Tapping 3, you'll see that it's nice clean crisp, and the object is it's a watertight closed model. I'm going to do an edit delete all by type history at this point because I'm pleased with what I've got here, and in comparison to this one, where this one's all soft and round and this one has tons more geometry, we get a lot better, cleaner detail in this shield than we do in this one. So for now, I'm just going to delete this one, and I don't really need it anymore. It was just as an example to show what was happening. And the final last thing I'm going to do is I want to show you how to easily bend this to give it more of a look. So if I want, I can bring this in a little bit more. It may mess with some of your stuff, so be careful. You'll see my bolts becoming smaller, and if you'd like to prevent that from happening, I'm going to show you first what we need to do. We're going to use something called the soft select tool. So make sure we're going to click the very first one down the middle. If I turn on my soft select tool, toggling B, let's see if they have it in here under mesh tools. Soft select, edit mesh. I don't think they do have it anywhere else. I'm not sure. I don't think they do. It's called soft select. It's not soften edge. Anyway, the keyboard shortcut for it is B. It's called soft select mode is on. Tap B to turn it on or off. And then holding B or entering, let's hit the little hammer with the bullet points next to it. In here, I'm going to use my move tool and turn soft select on or off. I hold B. I was hoping my soft select would come up in here, but I don't see it. So holding B anyway, holding B and left clicking will adjust. Holding B and left clicking will adjust the soft select sort of sensitivity, if you will. Yellow and red being extremely strong, black to nothing or nothing selected means very soft or very subtle select. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring this up to about this point, and now I'm going to go ahead and drag this out and maybe a little bit more. I'm going to drag this out, and I'm going to start to get a bend on my shield, so I get this soft bend on the shield. I think that's fine. This is all you need for a submission. I know this is a tough one. If you have questions, be sure to message me. But one last thing before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and select these last final edges here. I'm going to bring my soft select down so it's only affecting things in the back. And I believe this is just the back side. Yep. And I'm going to go ahead and just drag that in to make it slightly thinner, and that so it doesn't affect any of the bolts or anything I have up on the front. And now I can go ahead and easily do that once more time, and I'm going to just drag this out. And now I've got my shield. So if you have any questions for me, go ahead and just shoot me a message on Canvas inbox or shoot me an email. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a tough one. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and yeah, stay tuned for the next one.